Welcome back to The Work. Today's podcast is going to be speaking about something that all of us can relate to. And I'm going to be helping guide you and talk you through how to get through difficult times. And the key thing here with this podcast is being able to not just tell you about the fact that life is difficult and challenging, because you know that anyway, maybe to remind you of it, but even more importantly, help give you strategies to build resilience, to give you things to better work on that will help you get through hard moments in your life. Because essentially, you know that everyone is going to experience some difficult times. Everyone hits moments where things feel a bit heavy. Maybe that's to do with work, finances, health issues, relationships. And it can be normal to struggle in certain periods. And today I'm going to sort of help you reflect on some of the areas that you might be struggling in and give you some awareness and some things you can do to start to navigate a more helpful path so you can recover from difficult times or just sometimes survive and cope with difficult times more effectively. Because I suppose life goes through different seasons, different chapters. And during these seasons and chapters, some will go a little bit more smoothly. You think, oh, life feels pretty good right now. It's all going all right. And at certain moments and certain chapters, you'll go, wow, how is so much stuff going wrong right now? This is a real difficult patch. This has happened. This has happened. This has happened. I'm fighting fires everywhere. And we need to be able to have some skills, some tools, some strategies to be able to cope effectively. So it's never a question of what will happen if you face hard times. It's a question of what will you do when you face hard times? Because they will happen in different shapes and forms, in different contexts, in different amounts to different people, but it's going to be there. And what you'll see throughout today's podcast is that I can never talk about one thing mutually exclusively. I've got to talk about how all these areas overlap and integrate with each other. Some of the things I'm going to share, I've shared on previous podcasts, so I'll keep them a little bit shorter. And some of the things I'm going to share, I'll be talking about in even more detail in future podcasts. So this podcast also integrates and links to all of my other podcasts because they've got that recurring theme of building strength, building resilience, doing the work, becoming the best version of yourself by doing the work that matters. And that's it. This takes work. And that's why I've called this podcast The Work. Because I think sometimes we get lost in it. We get lost when we talk about mental health and psychology and life. It's great to have nice things. I get it. And it's good to be able to share things. But sometimes we need to do more work to be able to actually build resilience and build strength and have our best possible life. We have to do more work to achieve our full potential. If you want to achieve your full potential and live the best life you can, and got to highlight you can for your wants, your needs, your values, your goals, you're in the right place. So you know that hard times are a part of life. But it's amazing how we can really wrestle with that. Because what you understand logically and intellectually is of course very different to your emotional experience. I'm going to talk about today about how we can handle some of those emotions that come along. And as I share through these sections today, I'm also going to really finish with probably the most important point that I really want you to connect with at the end of the podcast. The thing is, sometimes we can kind of subconsciously pick up from the world that things should all go a certain way. Things should look a certain way for us to be successful. Life needs to have this, this and this for it to be a good life. And often we tend to think that if bad things are happening, hard times, difficult times, that means that life isn't good. But it's a crazy thing, but how good your life is often down to how you choose to view it. Now, I get life circumstances and difficult things is a percentage of your quality of life. It is, but it's not everything. Okay, and how we cope with these things is down to your genetics, down to your previous experiences, but also down to the work you're willing to do to be able to build this capacity to cope with the ups and downs of life and still thrive and still live the best possible life. Because if every time something goes wrong, we go, oh, that's it, I knew life was a bit crap, I knew it's a bit rubbish, it's always me, this is always happening, then you're going to be in a constant roller coaster. Rather than going, okay, this isn't the ideal situation, this isn't the ideal set of circumstances, I wouldn't have chosen this, but this is the way that it is, and I can choose to make the most of this situation or view it in a different way or take the opportunities from these hardships. And this is some of the things that I'm going to talk about in further detail throughout today's podcast. So it's remembering that it's not going to be smooth, and that's okay. That's a part of life. It's not just smooth. And to be honest with you, imagine if it was. Imagine if it was all easy and comfortable and smooth and there's never any challenge. How would you really feel? It goes back to my metaphor last week when I spoke about you being in a boat. And if your boat's not sailing in a meaningful direction, as I discussed last week, I said, look, you're going to feel a bit aimless, you're going to feel a bit low, a bit flat, a bit lethargic. Things start to feel a little bit pointless. You don't have that purpose and that passion. But then when you sail your boat in that meaningful direction, there's lots of uncomfortable thoughts and things that come along. And sometimes even when you move in that meaningful direction, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a storm that's going to hit you and throw you off track and maybe even cause your boat to flip over. In times when you're just keeping your head above water and trying not to drown, like that can be a part of the process of living your best life. And this is hard because in our modern world, we don't see a lot of this online, do we? People living their best life don't often talk about the hardships enough. And also maybe they don't talk a lot about some of the advantages and bits of luck that they've had as well. So we go, oh, they look like they're doing great and life looks perfect for them. And they're saying, look, live a life like me. But we don't see really what's going on with their relationships. Maybe they're healthy or not. Who knows? I don't know. But all the time I'm concluding that their life is perfect, the more I start to judge my life on theirs. Because what is a perfect life? What is a successful life? What is a happy life? Sometimes it's how we choose to cope with difficulty is as important, if not more important, than how we choose to connect with the good times and the good moments. And sometimes when you do hear people's stories who have been successful, when they share some of the hardships, you can start to see some of the resilience and some of the mindset that they've trained to be able to cope with some of those bumps in the road. So this next section, I won't spend too long on it because it's really just recapping last week's podcast. Okay, so if you want to know more about this, go back and re-listen or listen to, for the first time, last week's podcast about managing difficult thoughts, managing unhelpful beliefs. These will creep in when the pressure increases. Okay, when you start to feel a bit squashed by life, what comes out is what's inside. Okay, if you want to learn more about yourself or others, have a look at how you or other people cope during the hard moments. We can all be happy and nice and positive when life is a little bit smoother. That's not that difficult. The real test is how you react and cope with and manage the hard moments. That's when the lessons come up. And not expecting yourself to be this perfect person, but striving to do your best. Striving to say to yourself, okay, if I was to fast forward 10 years from now, how would I like to say I coped with and dealt with this current situation? It allows you to kind of zoom out of this situation and think about it from a bigger perspective. There's loads of tools there, but this is all along the kind of cognitive piece, and your beliefs are a part of this cognitive piece. Because the pressure goes up and up and up, and you start to feel more comfortable and you're having more kind of psychological distress, some of those beliefs about who you are, I'm someone that just can't cope, I'm someone that just always fails, not believing that you have the ability to be able to develop skills or use your own strengths to be able to keep moving forward in a positive direction. You've got to be able to see what you're capable of. And I get it. Sometimes you need to just do the actions before feeling and believing it. Again, I mentioned this last week, but we have to at least acknowledge and entertain the importance that our beliefs are incredibly powerful in how we cope with difficult moments. Okay, because sometimes they'll blindside you. Sometimes you might see them coming, but they're all going to feel pretty nasty. You know, you might find that, okay, they're creeping in, these unhelpful beliefs, but could there be a different narrative? Could there be something that you could start to connect with that is more helpful? So when we look at psychology, we have different perspectives, don't we? Often we have a bit of ambivalence where one side of us thinks this and another side of us thinks and wants to do this. And maybe have a choice in what side we decide to pay attention to. And a helpful way would be, okay, I've had some failures in the past, but I can learn from those failures and I can develop strength and resilience. An unhelpful way of looking at it and viewing it would be, I failed once, so it just isn't for me. Or you could be saying, I find this difficult and I won't be able to figure this out. How about you said, well, I find this difficult, that's okay, but there's always a way to be able to figure stuff out. And believing that you can change and you can adapt. Now, I know these are really easy words for me to say, and actually doing this in the practical world is hard, but it starts with awareness. If you want to know more information on this, listen to last week's podcast. Let me just get a quick sip of water. Otherwise my throat will dry up. We don't want that because I've got a lot to say today. So these are all common. These happen. It's part of being human, especially when you start to feel a threat and a danger. You can start to over-identify with some of these unhelpful thoughts. But when you do, your world starts to shrink. Okay, your options start to feel limited and you start to really sort of play really small. You just think, I can't do anything, I can't. And it can happen, but just trying to take one step forward. A part of this, and every time I talk about mental well-being and difficult times and resilience, I always have to highlight this word, acceptance. It's such a foundational tool to begin to navigate. And it isn't just as simple as, that's hard, okay, we'll just accept it and move on. It probably depends on how much of an emotional toll this thing is taking. You know, let's use a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is I knock my knee against a bit of garden furniture. Probably pretty quickly I go, that's irritating, who put that furniture there, bloody furniture, have a bit of a rant, get up my chest, and I crack on. It's not too hard to accept that I've got a bit of a bruised knee. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe it's losing a loved one, a breakdown of a long-term relationship or divorce, kind of losing things, going through a process of grief. That can be hard to really fully come to terms with and accept. But at some point, you've got to understand that acceptance is about acknowledging and facing reality as it is, not how you wish it was. Because the more you sort of resist reality, the more you kind of distract yourself from what's really happening, the heavier it starts to feel. And it's an understandable coping strategy, and we'll talk about coping strategies in a bit. So I get it, avoid, distract. And at first, you might do that when it's something really hard to kind of really work through mentally. But if you're always using that distraction technique, you're never really working, you're never really healing, and actually you're making this whole thing a lot harder for yourself. So when you go through a difficult situation, a difficult time, let's go back to an example I shared at the beginning. Finances, that's a real tough stress. Something that many of us can relate to, having a period of our life when we are feeling really constrained and pressured by lack of financial resources. But we know if we never really look at our bank account and we start to work through our numbers and our income and outgoings, then I don't really get any better at managing it. You know that. Emotionally, you think, I just don't want to look at it. I get it. You want to protect yourself. You take a deep breath, you get out those bank statements, you have a little look at some income stuff, what's happening, all those direct debits, all those bills. the mortgage payments, whatever. You work through it, you accept reality, and you start to go, okay, now I can start to move forward. Because all the time you're not looking at those bank statements, it's actually getting heavier because it's a little niggle. You know you should be doing it, but you don't. And that financial example could almost just be a metaphor for everything else when it comes to dealing with a difficult moment. We've got to have that uncomfortable conversation because all the time I'm not having it. It's there, sat with me. I've got to take that uncomfortable action that I know I need to do, but I'm not because it's scary and I'm uncertain. I don't know what the outcomes are going to be. But all the time I don't take that important, valuable action, I'm causing myself more distress. Okay, next section. This is the one that I've been kind of gearing towards, is looking at coping mechanisms, your behaviours. Because when you're going through something hard, you're going to have different ways of coping. And some of those ways are going to be really helpful for you. They're going to help you, they're going to serve you. And some of them aren't going to be that helpful. And when you reflect and you're really honest, you can start to understand the impact that your behaviours and choices have on your health, on your well-being and on your life. We always need a bit of compassion here because when you're getting squashed and the pressure's going up and you're trying to navigate this difficult time and you haven't got the tools, you're just going to go for what seems like the best choice in the moment. And you might want to self-soothe with a bit of alcohol or some unhealthy food just to hide away from the world. And here and there, I get it. But when those behaviours become persistent, they become your go-to every single time you feel stressed and overwhelmed and are struggling, they can become hurtful and maladaptive and affect your ability to be able to accept, affect your ability to be able to take positive steps, and ultimately negatively affect your overall well-being. So we have to be able to look at those behaviours and go, well, how are you coping right now? What are you doing to cope with this situation? There'll be something. There'll be a distraction technique, or there might be some positive behaviours around what you do to take care of your health. Lots of my clients will say, when I feel stressed, I just get myself out on a nice walk, get some fresh air, get some perspective, connect with nature, become present and focused. And then when they go back into the real world again, they go back into those stressful situations, they're doing it from a place of calm, of a greater capacity to be able to cope, and maybe a slightly different perspective. Okay, just subtle. So that would be an example of a healthy way of coping during stress. But we all need something, we all need a group of tools, and we need to be able to kind of catch it quite early on, okay, especially when you're going through these difficult moments. So it's those questions. What's actually helping you? What maybe isn't helping you and keeping you stuck right now? And can you start to take responsibility for the things that you can control? Okay, because it can be incredibly overwhelming when you start to fuse and worry and connect with all the things that are out of your control. But what is within your control is how you choose to think about things, the work that you do, the choices you make with your daily behaviours, your reactions to your emotions. These are within your control, and these can make a massive difference into how well you cope with difficult moments. Now, don't expect yourself to be perfect here. Okay, I always add this into my content and podcast. Like, I don't always get it right. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in the past. I've tried to learn from those mistakes and try and always seek to get better. But I'll also make mistakes in the future. I'm not the perfect partner. I'm not the perfect father. I'm not the perfect person. And that's okay. I can tell you guys that, but I also need to understand that myself and maybe catch myself when I start to beat myself up for not being perfect or not getting this all great, even though I teach it and educate others and support others. Now I've got to work on it myself. And remember that I'm only human. And if I put unrealistic expectations on myself, all I do is cause more distress and more suffering for myself and then increase the likelihood of not coping as effectively, ironically. So it's about honest reflection. It's about making those small adjustments and just being willing to go, okay, I need to pick myself back up. I've fallen off track a little bit here. this is what I need to do to get back on track, and that's okay. If you can do that, that's a lot healthier mindset to have. Because as you start to reflect, you start to build your self-awareness, and then you don't need to just always use hindsight. You can start to catch yourself in the moment when you start to get pulled off track, rather than going, oh, where did I go off track last week? Because all the time you haven't developed your self-awareness, you're in this constant place of just going along with life the way that it is. Nothing really changes until you develop and build your self-awareness. That's where reflection, talking, being honest and taking responsibility is an absolute game changer. Because what you start to see over time is certain patterns creeping in. Often I see these sort of chain reactions with clients. So it might start with, okay, they've got a big life event they're struggling with, but some days they're better at coping with it than others. Why is that? Let's look at the chain. Okay, well at the top end of the chain they've got drinking too much alcohol in the evening. And at the bottom end of the chain they've got how much sleep they get. So by going to bed earlier, getting a good night's sleep, they've got great capacity to deal with the stresses and difficult times. They eat better, they manage their stress better throughout the day. Then in the evening they're likely to have a drink, and then they have better sleep, and it goes on like that. But we have to think, where in the chain are we going to break it? In this example, I focus on sleep. How can I help my clients with sleep? Sometimes actually, maybe you could say, could you start on the chain with the alcohol, because then that will help with the sleep. It's chicken or egg, but the point is we look at these chains, we look at these patterns, and we think, okay, rather than just saying just change, easy, great, stop the behaviour. That is incredibly uneducated perspective to take, okay? Because there's a reason for your behaviours. There's a reason for your unhelpful behaviours. And they serve you in some shape or form. And often in difficult times, some of these kind of unhealthier health behaviours may soothe you, may relax you, may calm you, may distract you. So there's a real logical, understandable reason why you do these things. But you have to see how it benefits you first of all and go, okay, I understand why I'm doing that. But if I'm honest, that alcohol's creeping into 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks in the evening. That's too much. That's affecting sleep, that's affecting mood, that's affecting recovery, that's affecting stress management, it's affecting relationships, etc., etc. So catching it and going, okay, now I need to understand it, and then try and break that kind of coupling somewhere in the chain. And this is something that I'm a massive fan of within my coaching, is allowing me and my clients to see the full picture rather than me saying, cool, where are you going wrong? Great, stop doing that. And people will say it to me, they'll say, look, James, I just need to get a grip, don't I? Just need to suck it up and get it done. Has that ever worked for people? Maybe. But if I'm honest, it's an approach that rarely works, because they repeat the same stuff over and over again. And because they're saying to themselves, I'm not perfect, I'm doing this, so I need to be stronger. I need to be stronger by just gritting my teeth more. Strength is created by being a bit smarter, not just by gritting your teeth more. And to be smarter means to reflect, means to be honest, to really unpeel some layers. That's the intelligent approach that allows you to build strength and resilience and cope better. So often when I'm helping clients through this, I'm really helping people become a bit more intelligent in themselves. You know, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of intelligent people that can intellectualise things in an amazing fashion. Stuff they lose me sometimes. But actually what they haven't done is developed more knowledge on themselves. They've got more knowledge on the outside world. They've learnt more about that. But they still don't know a lot about themselves, because when I start to question them, there's no judgment here. But when I start to question them, they and me can see they haven't really examined themselves, they haven't really been introspective. Your problems lie in the internal far more often than they lie on the external. Your problems lie far more often in the internal than they do in the external. That is so key. So if you're struggling, go internal rather than external. So if you're external, you're saying, well, life needs to look like this, circumstances must look like this, and then I'll be happy. You can be waiting a long time. As I said, you might just get a little bit of smoothness, but then the next thing happens, and you're making your happiness conditional on life going a certain way. And so much of life is out of your control. So by not working on the internal, funnily enough, you're causing yourself more distress. Next section, this is such a key one that I'll talk about. Just go back to simple routines and structure. During difficult times, it can disrupt our good routines. It can disrupt our helpful habits. We lose this kind of structure in life. And going back to going, okay, this is when I get up. This is when I have breakfast. This is when I exercise. This is when I walk the dog. This is when I spend time with the kids. This is when I work. Just having those structures in the day is incredible at helping you cope. Okay, trying to get into these routines, doing things at the same time, keeping regular with the quality of food you eat, moving your body, the sleep you get, the hydration you get, keeping things as predictable as you possibly can. Life will throw you curveballs. I've said it before, I'll say it again, that's a part of life. But where possible, get in structure. Your emotional brain is far calmer when it can feel like life is a little bit more predictable. Okay, it can never be 100% predictable. Life is guaranteed to be uncertain ultimately. But if we can just go, I've got these regular habits, these regular routines and good life structure, as much as you can, you control those controllables. It's a game changer for helping you cope in difficult moments. It really is. Okay, support. No man is an island. Okay, now this is a really important moment because when you are struggling, a lot of men aren't going to go, here we go, I'm over here, boys, I'm struggling over here. Don't get me wrong, they can ask for help. I find men can ask for help in lots of different ways. But I often don't hear men or women to say, look, say the words I'm struggling, and that's okay. So we've got to be able to be open to maybe asking for help in different ways. So, because I'm saying that in a compassionate way, because I know what it's like to struggle, and sometimes you feel like you just want to do it all on your own. You just want to be that island. You think you can carry it all alone. And when you're able to find space and talk things through, you do feel a bit lighter. It's better to have people in your life that you can have deep, honest, open conversations with, people you can trust. If you've got a professional, a counsellor, a high-level coach, brilliant. If you've got friends or family that are self-aware and supportive and don't try and fix your problems, that can just listen and hold space for you, brilliant. Just want to try and avoid people who can be quite judgmental or say, oh well, when I did this and this and this, and make it about them. It's about you. And it's incredible to have that courage to be able to reach out. It really is. Sometimes it's not saying I'm struggling. Sometimes it's just saying to a mate, do you want to go out for a beer or go out for a coffee or go out for a walk, and then go out and play golf, whatever it is for you. And then those conversations just organically happen. I think that's really important for men. Okay. And yes, if more men can get therapy and work on their own psychology, I think we'd see less mental health issues for men. If it was the right work, because sometimes we see men are incredibly brave, but sometimes they might go down a path that isn't right for them. It's finding the right people who can help you, who can understand you. And also, another part of support that I always add in there is, even if you're struggling, have people in your life who you're supporting in some shape or form. It might be quite practical. It might be, a certain type of support that only you can offer. But it's a support where you are being able to show your strengths, be the best version of you to be able to help others. It allows you to be more resilient. It helps you cope, helps you to see your value when you're supporting others. So that's really key, because I think men start to struggle when they don't feel valued, don't value themselves. They don't feel like they're supporting others. They don't feel needed or wanted. That's an incredibly lonely place for a man. So being able to think, no, I have got some value to offer. And everyone listening or watching this has got strengths. Everyone. And when I'm going through this stuff with my clients, I'm unpeeling those layers, and we can say, you've got some strengths here that you didn't realise. You're making a positive impact on the world in ways you didn't even know. You're standing on far more value than what you realise. And then using that value to impact the people around you is, wow, it's a beautiful thing, and something that I think we all need to spend time connecting with. So I mentioned emotions a few times throughout today. It's a recurring theme because managing emotions is hard and complex. And the more pressure, the more difficult, and the more challenging the situation, the more heightened the emotions. What I want to say in this section, this isn't going to be a fully comprehensive piece on emotions. I'll be doing that in future podcasts. But what I want to say is understand your values so you can manage your emotions better. Because by understanding your values, you're understanding who you want to be and what is most important in your life. Okay, because your emotions can pull you down certain paths that aren't in line with your values. They're just in line with what your emotions want. Okay, it's this primal brain. It just wants to feel good. And if I'm emotional, I might take that out on the wrong people at the wrong time. And we can do that. But we try to go back, to try to repair, to try to build calmness, stability, and then we're less likely to react in an unhelpful way to our emotions because we've reconnected with ourselves and we've reconnected with what we want to stand for, who we want to be in this moment. We ask ourselves that question that I said at the beginning of the podcast. If you fast forward 10 years from now and look back on this situation, what would you like to be saying about how you coped and responded to this adverse set of circumstances, to this difficult situation? The answer to that question is your values. Okay. How would you like other people to be describing you? Okay. That is your values. What and who do you care the most about? Focus on those things. If it's your health, try and focus on that. Family, kids, put your energy into that. Try and be as focused and engaged and as present as possible in those most meaningful areas of your life. Is that easy? No. Is it vital? Yes. Your emotions will be all over the place at times. Sometimes you'll want to suppress and you might do that. Sometimes they might feel like they're affecting your behaviours. And sometimes you might feel like you're managing them more effectively. It's a constant work in progress. The bigger the challenge, the more heightened the emotions. And I'll be doing a future podcast on how you can develop your emotional intelligence very soon. But I want you to be able to just think about this. If you can't at least be open to the fact that you have emotions, then you're suffering straight away because, yes, there's definitely a time and place to suppress them and just crack on. I get it. In the height of the situation, you've just got to do what needs to be done. Maybe not got too much time and space to be thinking about how you're feeling. That's in quite an extreme situation or just maybe a work situation or a certain moment. But at some point, it's acknowledging and processing some of the uncomfortable emotions that come along with hard moments. Or maybe when you reflect on things from the past as well, that can be equally as painful. What might come along? Some shame, some judgment of yourself or others, some fear, some anger, regret, rejection, uncertainty and sadness. Like, they're just a few of the emotions that are really hard to look at, accept and work through. Like, to accept that thing makes me feel sad, that thing makes me feel angry. And sometimes anger seems like a go-to one for men. It definitely has been for me throughout the years. Quite easy to get to anger, but sometimes, not always, but beneath the anger is some sadness. It's actually the sadness that I need to process. Not all the time. There's not always a secondary emotion. Sometimes it's just a first level emotion in certain situations. Emotions are complex. I know it can seem a bit messy and a bit fluffy, a bit untangible. It isn't just easy just to go to the gym. Or if we go back to helpful coping strategies that I talked about earlier, going to the gym and having a training session could be incredibly helpful, but it's not the full picture. It can't do everything when it comes to managing your emotions. It can just give you a good place to work through some of your anger, to be in a place that hopefully you enjoy, to feel a sense of purpose and progress. And it might mean that you're in a better place with greater capacity to cope with those uncomfortable emotions when you're back there again. But we're still going to need to process them in some shape or form. But it does mean learning to see your emotions as just that. It's just an emotion. I can feel sad, but not be a sad person. I can feel sadness, and it's learning to kind of gradually loosen the grip of some of these emotions. And that can take time. When something's really hard, when something's really upset you or made you angry, there might be hours, days of just feeling that intense emotion. But you know this. Time is amazing because the emotion doesn't stay up there forever. You give it a bit of time, you allow your brain to process. And that's why, especially in difficult situations and circumstances, we know that isn't the time to text that person, to write that email, to say what you're feeling. You need to step back, you need a deep breath, and you need to be able to process it and communicate it in a helpful and effective way. Now, that is so much easier said than done, okay? That can come across like I'm underselling how hard that is to do, okay? And that is incredibly hard. It takes practice, okay? You can't just listen to a podcast like this, go away and nail it. I've been talking about this stuff and practicing it for years, and I'm still working on it and definitely don't always get it right. So the closing themes here, the last theme here I'm going to really highlight, is probably the most important part. Before we get to it, the big theme here is resilience, isn't it? Resilience isn't actually just shutting down, pretending you're not feeling something, pretending that nothing's wrong, pretending you're not struggling. It's having some self-compassion. It's saying it's okay to struggle with these certain things. I can work through them. It's that belief in yourself. It's that confidence and courage to face things as they are. It's that ability to be able to accept. It's that ability to look at your behaviours and look at the ones that aren't serving you and the ones that are. All the stuff that I spoke about today and then all the podcasts I've done, so much of it really is about helping you build resilience, one of the most important traits we need to be able to thrive in life. And this last section is really about encouraging you to find meaning in the struggle. To find meaning in the struggle. And that is such a powerful thing to do. If you can say, look, I'm not happy, I don't like this situation, but I tell you what, I could grow here. And actually, I need to feel some uncomfortable emotions if I'm going to get better at handling uncomfortable emotions. And I can't build resilience without some hardship and some pain and some struggle. And actually, because of this situation that I'm going through, or because of that situation from the past that I went through, it's allowed me to build my self-awareness, build my strength, build my wisdom, actually make better decisions moving forward in life, build better, healthier relationships moving forward in my life because of those adversities. So if you can examine that, I believe there's purpose that can be found in struggle. Okay, it doesn't mean we're trying to get rid of the struggle and say, oh, it's all right, just find the meaning in it, it'll be all right, just get some resilience, don't worry about it. We're not saying that for 1 second. If you're really struggling right now, I have all the empathy and compassion in the world for you. And maybe it is for you in the moment just going, look, I just need to try and get to bed a bit earlier. Great. If you take that from today's podcast, that will knock onto something else. And maybe you've come out of some hardships. And you think, you know what, maybe you haven't processed some stuff. Maybe it's still eating you up a little bit. Maybe you've still got that anger or regret or frustration or sadness. And that's okay. They'll all come up here and there. But having some tools to catch it, be aware of it, be open to processing it, and then choose a helpful behaviour that's in line with your values will transform your life. It really will. So this is what I'm passionate about, okay? These tools aren't just about theory. These are things that I've done personally and continually try and work on personally, and things that I help my clients with in a professional setting. Again, it takes work, and that's why I love my title of the podcast, The Work. That's what this is. This is work. It's work to add more to your life. And that's what I'm passionate about as a coach, is helping coach people to do the right, meaningful work for them. Not what someone else does, not to chase someone else's dreams or someone else's values, to catch yourself when you're comparing and judging yourself, to find the right, authentic path for you. You need time, you need space, and you need to be able to be asked good questions to allow yourself to come up with the right answers. If this resonated with you today, I'm going to ask for you to share it if you could. Anyone you think, you know what, he could do with hearing that, he could do with hearing that right now, share it. I'm here to support, and I'm here to offer as much guidance and coaching support as I can for people. So as always, guys, thank you for putting in the work to listen to today's podcast. I encourage you to go away and try and implement and integrate some of these things into your life. While that isn't easy, ultimately it's in the most difficult steps where you get the most reward in your life. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll speak to you very soon.